Welcome to 7 Investing Now, a show that teaches you how to take a long-term view on investing by better understanding what's happening in the market now.
It is January of 2021. Good afternoon, 7 investors, and welcome to the Monday edition, the first one of the year of 7 Investing Now. My name is Daniel Brooks Kline. My friends call me Dan. I'm joined today by Steve Symington and Austin Lieberman. Steve, I'll let you go first. How was your New Year's?
New Year's was pretty chill. Just played card games and stayed up until just a little after midnight, and that's about the extent of it. So heard some fireworks going off, but pretty tame this time.
I tried to stay up till midnight. I made it till about 11:15. Austin Lieberman, how was your New Year's?
It was good. I think I was asleep by like 9, 10 o'clock. I've got young kids, so anytime I can get to sleep, I go to sleep. Sometimes I don't even want to, and I just fall asleep.
So guys, we have all been struggling this morning. Slack is down. I didn't quite realize how important Slack was to my general mental health until today when I type some things in, it's not working. So this is actually a global problem. This is, of course, an interactive show, so please get your comments in. We'd like to hear from you. We will take your questions. This is 7 Investing Now, and we're going to start with our top story. That's the biggest thing going on today, and it is a big one. Guys, China. China is in the news. So the top story is, should Americans be wary of investing in China? And this comes after China has vowed to respond to the fact that 3 companies have been delisted from the New York Stock Exchange. These aren't companies you've necessarily heard of. It's China Telecom Corp Limited, China Mobile Limited, and China Unicom Hong Kong Limited. Not exactly public names, but Steve, is this something we should be worried about?
I think it's sort of one of those things, where these are companies where people maybe stateside don't know very well, but they're pretty big over there. And I think people are more concerned about retaliation. It's definitely not doing anything to kind of ease trade tensions and macro tensions. There's just a lot going on over there. But at the same time, a lot of analysts are saying, China's response to the sort of unfriendly actions by the U.S. For their companies is it probably won't be too severe, because it's kind of like we have to need each other. It's sort of frenemies situation. So we'll see. I'm not particularly worried about it, and I don't own them, so I'm not concerned there either. So yeah,
I'm not worried about these stocks I don't own. Austin, your thoughts here?
Yeah, I think I have no idea what those companies are. I've never even looked at them. But the thing it makes me conscious of is just investing in China in general. I don't own any Chinese companies, and I don't plan to. People might think that that's naive or something like that. But the fact of the matter is I just don't understand them. And we've even seen China go after Ant Group and Alibaba, which are 2 of the largest, companies. Alibaba is like one of the larger companies in the world, I think. So if it can happen to those companies, it can happen to anybody. And then it just does make me wary of things are volatile, right? So even just negative headlines between U.S. and Chinese relations or international trade relations can impact the whole market. The market's down today. Is it because of that? I don't know. Maybe. So it just reinforces the idea to focus on owning great long-term companies, not little companies we've never heard of that we hope go up 10, 20, 30% in a month or 2 or whatever. That happened a lot in 2020, but we're in a new year, baby. Things are going to be different. Let's just own great companies for a long time.
And even when you own a great company, you have to look at the regulations it faces. Where is that company listed? What country? What does it operate under? There are added pressures on Chinese companies. I don't own any Chinese stocks. I don't think I would because I don't understand the government. I don't understand sort of what's going on between the 2 countries. So for me, there's plenty of good companies to own. I would skip it. Steve, do you worry about this escalating? Could this end up with like Disney movies not playing in China? Right now, Soul is doing really, really well in the box office in China. Could this get sort of a little bit more tit for tat?
Yeah, it could. That's sort of always been the worry, though. I guess it's sort of a par for the course when it comes. And, this doesn't, I will say, I've only got one Chinese company in my portfolio. I had a couple that I sold for other concerns, but I still own shares of JD myself. And I think there is a lot of opportunity to invest in China. There are some great companies, but it really makes you hesitate, when you see so much that prohibits people from owning some of these big leading companies, and the potential for it escalating. It's a risk that you need to take into account when you own them. But it does make me second guess whether I want them in my portfolio. Like you said, there's a lot of great companies elsewhere. There's no shortage of opportunities, and there's a lot of places to put our money to work. So it does make me hesitate.
Austin, let me jump in here. I'm a Starbucks shareholder. Should I be worried? China's the number 2 market. Could they all of a sudden nationalize Starbucks, or put a tax on them, or who knows what they would do?
Yeah, Dan, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I was going to say something along the same lines, right? Like, I think with Starbucks, it's something to be aware of. Starbucks is a company in a product that they probably employ a lot of people in China, and I don't know exactly the details. They have a lot of stores in China. They bring a lot of business, and I'm sure the government and the economy is stronger because Starbucks is there. But could there be some type of a short-term impact? Sure. The other company that I love, but I'm cautious on, especially at the valuation it has, is the Trade Desk. I believe a lot of the Trade Desk's future and why the stock is as overvalued as it is right now is because of expectations of Chinese growth. They could be impacted severely by even headlines from China or regulations. They're partnering with a lot of Chinese companies for future advertising revenues and things like that. The Trade Desk is one I'm keeping an eye on. And if it has a significant sell-off, I would love to own shares again at some point. But keep an eye on the Trade Desk.
Yeah, I'll say as a Starbucks shareholder, I'm not overly concerned, but it is something I'm keeping an eye on because China does have a history of nationalizing businesses, and it's as complicated as it is to make Austin's half calf, double skinny, mocha latte, cappuccino, frappe. That's not rocket science. So this is a business you could nationalize and operate. It doesn't take a special amount of expertise. So that does scare me a little bit, but I don't think it's going to happen. I think China wants global dollars, and they're not going to do something that provocative. As we close this up, let me go to Steve on this one. Are you a little bit worried that Jack Ma has not appeared in public in 2 months? Has he been North Korean? Like, this doesn't seem good.
That's really odd. That it just popped up, and then it's like, this is one of the most high profile billionaires, business leaders in the world, and wait, he's been gone for 2 months. The public, and it could be that he's just, I don't know, out of the public eye. Who knows? Why he's not surfacing. But yeah, that's really worrisome. And a lot of people are concerned that China's government did something to him because he was basically angry with them partially over the Ant Group IPO, and he wants more of like a free market economy, and China's their government isn't particularly interested in fostering that. And so that's a concern with larger companies. How big, how great can some of these businesses become if they're hamstrung by that? And putting the personal situation and strangeness aside for Jack Ma, that makes me think about the opportunity as a whole.
Jack Ma, if you're out there, we would love to have you on Wednesday's edition of 7 Investing Now. Tweet us, call us, send Austin a message. Let us know where you are and that everything is okay. This is something to worry about, and the Ant Group IPO appears no closer to happening. Joey Kline, Happy New Year. Thank you. We appreciate it. Please get your comments in. We would love to take your questions. We would love to talk to you. Now, before we do what we're watching is where you guys bring stories. And it's what you want to talk about. Steve, the first of the month was New Year's Day. Mm-hmm. It was also the day our new picks dropped. I hate when people say dropped. It was when our new picks were released. We each write a big, long story explaining why we made a pick, and those became public on January 1st. The response has been overwhelming. Steve, how do people sign up if they'd like to get access to those picks?
Yeah, you want to see all of our new January picks that were released on Friday, and we're buying them at the market close today, 7investing.com/subscribe. If you're already not a subscriber, you can see not only those, but every pick that we've recommended since we launched last March. So that's what that's kind of the core of our service here. So we're excited. Kind of interesting timing because we release them on the first of the month, no matter what, and then we buy them the following trading, the trading day after they've been released at the market close. So we don't try and front run and buy these stocks like some short sellers might do. Open a short position and then try and drive the price down. That's not how we operate here. We're long-term investors. So 7investing.com/subscribe is where you can find them.
We hope to have you join us. We do private calls for members. We do a new member call every month. You get videos where we each pitch each other on the stocks we're going to talk about. The China opportunity says, not feeling the sell-off with my China picks today. Some great opportunities out there. Investing is about finding value where others don't. It absolutely can be. And it's just important to remember the risk involved. Guys, it's time for what we're watching. Steve, you wanted to talk about Tesla. Tesla, huge miss. It fell short by, 8 cars of its 500,000 car goal. And everything is a flutter. Steve, your thoughts here.
Right. So it's funny because the China opportunity, that comment, he mentioned NIO is one of his China picks up today. And that's part of the reason is because people are happy with Tesla's miss today. Technically, they fell short of the 500,000 annual vehicle delivery goal. They ended up, when all was said and done, 180,570 vehicles in the fourth quarter. That brought their full year 2020 deliveries to 499,550, basically right at, nearly at the goal. So you see some headlines that say Tesla fell short of Elon Musk's $500,000 vehicle delivery goal, really an arbitrary number. Those who follow the company closely know that we take these goals with a grain of salt. I think the first time he set that goal was back in he said he wanted to do it by 2018. And you know how things play out. And something else to keep in mind, just a couple of months ago at Tesla's annual shareholder meeting, Musk said that their current run rate at the time implied that they would deliver it was about 478,000 to 515,000 vehicles. This is just above the midpoint of that range. It was just fine. It technically beat Wall Street's expectations, even if they technically fell short of that goal. So that's why Tesla's up 4%. NIO is up 9%, I think, on the heels of that news, because China is a pretty big driver for Tesla as well. But all around, people are happy with it, and that's why Tesla is rallying to another ridiculous all-time high. Congrats, Tesla shareholders. So,
Steve, are you bullish on Tesla? I have to say, I can't imagine that there are 180,000 Americans who during a pandemic bought a really expensive electric vehicle. To me, that seems unfathomable. So I guess that's a good sign for the company.
Yeah, but these are global too, so not just True. Americans, but it's, I guess over the long term, the other thing to keep in mind is Musk has said that he wants to increase their vehicle deliveries to 20 million annually over the next decade or so. So 10 years from now, he wants to bring that to 20 million. These are still really early stages. That's also not to mention the potential for, their energy ambitions, their solar, their battery technology. There's a lot going on here. The market is very forward-looking, even if Tesla's valuation might seem frothy. I'm not selling my shares, and people might think it's this mind-boggling run that can't possibly continue. And I would welcome a pullback, and I'd consider adding on it. But it's been an insane run for Tesla for a reason, and I wouldn't bet against them at this point. So I'll say that.
The road from 500,000 to 20 million is a really long road, and he might as well say I want $1 billion, because it's kind of a preposterous number. I don't know. I know a lot of people love this company. They're infatuated with Musk. To me, he just seems like a little too much genius mixed with con man. I'm not a fan, and it keeps me away. And I know everyone's going to hate me on Twitter for that. It's a great company. They have great aspirations. I just don't see it getting to that, even 2 million, let alone 20 million. But Austin, you wanted to talk about Zoom. We're not doing this show on Zoom, but we do some of our other calls on Zoom. Your comment was, it's really interesting again. Do you mean the stock price?
Yeah, well, Zoom as a business, the size of the market cap now in relation to their sales and what I think their sales growth is going to be, and then in turn the stock price is interesting to me again. So I own some shares of Zoom. I was much more bullish on it throughout 2020, and if people follow me on Twitter, you could have seen my thoughts on it. But then when it got up to around $150 billion market cap, I was less bullish and actually got rid of my shares and then re-entered a little bit later. But the moral of the story is that I had an investment thesis for Zoom at the beginning of really in 2019 and then into 2020. That 5-year thesis basically played out in 2020. It got to where I couldn't see it 5xing or 10xing because from $150 billion market cap, I couldn't see that as easily. It has sold off and it's currently 37% down from its highs. I think it has sold off a lot because of the narrative. Vaccines are out. We're going to return to somewhat of a normal and people are going to go back to work and they're not going to use Zoom. I am of the belief that we are never, ever, ever not going to need something like Zoom or other remote collaboration tools. Zoom has competitors. They're far, and people are underestimating Zoom as they're still underestimating Zoom as just a video platform. This company is one of the best companies at execution in the world. They're one of the most innovative companies in the world, and they're they've scaled faster than almost any company in history. And I'm going to increase my own position in Zoom. It may become a 7 investing recommendation of mine in the next couple months. Subscribe and find out. But it's down. It had $161 billion market cap, down to $100 billion today. They're going to have $2.5 billion in revenue in fiscal year 2021, which is just finishing for them. So they're a little ahead. So just think 2021 fiscal year is just finishing. If they don't grow revenue at all, so they have 0% growth and they just get 2.5 billion again in the next year, that means they'll have $5 billion in revenue about a year from now. That puts their $100 billion valuation at 20x, which is not that expensive when you talk about the quality business of Zoom. Then if they don't grow again from there, that's another 5 billion in revenue. So they would have $10 billion in revenue at the end of fiscal year 2023. That's at 10x sales from today. So we'd be talking about no growth in the stock price from then till now. But when we think about risk reward, how crazy the market has been, I'm really interested in Zoom. And then just their year in review, they released Zoom apps, Zoom for Home, on Zoom, which is virtual events taking place on the Zoom platform. You can host there, and they've got a platform for it. Zoom 5.0, which is encryption and all kinds of different stuff. And now there's talk about calendar and email from Zoom. So this company, I think people are really underestimating it.
Yeah. So people talk about Zoom as a stay-at-home stock. And here's the problem with that. When we get to the sort of new normal, or old normal, I guess it is, when we all have a vaccine, we're going to Zoom less in that there are going to be situations where we have in-person meetings. But even the 7 of us at 7 Investing, let's say we have a group get together, the odds that all 7 of us can go are going to be difficult. So there might be a meeting now that takes place where everyone's on Zoom, that going forward, a couple of people are going to be on Zoom. I know that when I last worked with colleagues in different offices, sometimes I would physically be in the office, but not be able to get to the room where the meeting was. So I might Zoom into a meeting, or I might be sitting next to someone and we're both in the meeting on Zoom. So this isn't just a remote work technology. It's also sort of a convenience thing. When I worked for Microsoft, half the time you couldn't technically get to the meeting you were supposed to get to because of how big the campus was and where things were. So it can absolutely be a challenge. I'm bullish on Zoom. I think there's going to be, it's sort of become a bedrock of society. I've talked about this a lot. My mother's tap dance class is all on Zoom, and happy birthday, Mom, if you're watching. And that class, while it's not going to be on Zoom after this, for most people, it's still going to be there for the person who's traveling, for the person who's sick. So I think this has become something that's like a default for every company. Schools that are using Zoom. Well, a kid's homesick. Is he well enough to watch? Is someone, immune compromised and can't come to school? Well, all the technology's there to do it. I think that's going to happen. I think that's going to be huge. as we head into the home stretch, we would welcome your comments. We're getting some comments. We appreciate it, but feel free to ask questions, things you want us to talk about. For the home stretch today, what trends are you following in 2021? I know for me, it's all about streaming TV, but I'll leave this to you, Austin.
Yeah, we just talked about one. Hybrid remote work or work from home is here to stay. No company, no public company CEO is going to be able to use we weren't prepared or this surprised us as an excuse when the next global emergency hits. It might not be a pandemic, but it could be something else that disrupts being able to go to workplaces. So that is not going to be able to be an excuse for anybody. So the tools and the key tools that actually enable that are going to continue to be important, like Zoom, which I just talked about. And then just quickly, I think we turned a page in remote and digital healthcare. It's accepted now. So now we're going to hit the growth phase. And I think it's going to be exponential over the next 10 years. Growth in renewable energy for a long time. Renewable energy, things like solar and even wind turbines and rare earth metals, those have been too costly to produce to make them economically viable. I think we're innovating fast enough to where those are going to be real sustainable businesses without the need for as many government credits and tax credits and things like that. And then just two big ones, data and data security. We're going to create more data. This is according to AWS. I'm going to get this stat wrong, but over the next 3 years, we're going to create more data than in the previous 30 years combined. What are we going to do with it? How are we going to store it? How are we going to make business decisions with it? And then how are we going to secure it? We've seen that in the news. And then space stuff, just because it's awesome and interesting. Excited to learn more about space and see what we do there.
In 2020, we'll be broadcasting from space. No, that's probably not likely to happen. One of the things I'm really excited about is 2019, pre-pandemic, we were living in the co-working era. We were seeing an explosion of the sort of idea that, you have a shared space, maybe you have a private office, but there's coffee and the place I have might have snacks and there's beer and there's all sorts of stuff. I think co-living is going to become a trend going forward because as people move away from where their office is, they're still going to want to physically go to the office. So maybe you move to Arizona and your office is San Francisco. You might fly in a few days a month, and I see some of the office space becoming co-living, where you get sort of a dorm room or even more like a train bunk, where you pay a certain amount a month or a certain amount per night. It's not quite a hotel, and it has that co-working space. It has that sort of camaraderie, but it's also sort of a cheap way to put a lot of people up. That's going to require some zoning changes in many cities. Steve, what are you looking forward to in 2021?
Oh, I'll be watching a few different trends pretty closely, and that's subject to change, of course, depending on what the new year brings, because we all know 2020 didn't turn out how we thought it would at the start, from the start.
That is putting it mildly. If you had asked us at the end of 2019 if we thought there'd be a 10-month or however many months it has been global pandemic that has us all stuck at home, I don't think anyone would have said that. We might have all made jokes about Quibi, and we would not have talked pandemic. Steve, sorry, back to you.
Wildfires, right? So I guess top of my list for the things that I'll be watching are those industries whose growth stories were accelerated by the pandemic. I want to see if they're sustainable. So I'm talking, in addition to the stuff Austin said, we have remote digital healthcare, of course, and data security. I watch closely from some of my picks at Seven Investing, but also things like home robotics, online education, network infrastructure companies. These are businesses that not only have their stories been accelerated by the pandemic, but their management teams are largely predicting that their momentum should prove sustainable even as the pandemic wanes. So that is something that I want to watch very closely this year, because I think as the pandemic does wane, we've seen a lot of pullbacks that are really unjustified in these companies. As you say, "Whoops, the economy's reopening. Let's pivot." And it's silly, because I think as soon as their underlying strength becomes more clear, that's when things start to get kind of fun from an individual investor's standpoint. And I think this will prove to be a stock picker's market, and we can take advantage of that and prove our worth, just like we did in 2020.
I will say that when the pandemic ends, puzzle sales are going to go down. Here's the thing. There's nothing fun about a puzzle. Stop pretending it's enjoyable. This is not good. I used to run a toy store. People bought tons of puzzles. Nope. This is a trend that's going to end. We appreciate so many of you watching us. Not a ton of people commenting, but a ton of people watching here on January 4th, 2021. I keep saying it out loud because it seems unfathomable to me. I feel like it was like a year ago when my wife spent January 1st, 2000 in Times Square. We booked a hotel room for the next night, sort of to see the aftermath. And the world didn't end. The ATM still worked. Our computers didn't crash. And we are now 21 years later. But Austin, Steve, time to hit our finisher. Sam Bailey, if you want to share the graphic, we appreciate it. Which do you want to learn more about in 2021? This was closer than I thought. 34.4% said Bitcoin, 23.5% said the Internet of Things, 24.9% said virtual/augmented reality, and 17.1% said autonomous vehicle tech. For me, I'm kind of most interested in the Internet of Things. Austin, do any of these speak to you that you want to learn more about in 2021?
Yeah, if anybody follows me on Twitter, you know how much of a Bitcoin bull I've been for basically the last 10 years. I mean, I nailed it. I called it. I owned it when I was like 30 cents. On a serious note, I want to learn more about Bitcoin, and I am learning more about Bitcoin. I'm reading/listening to a book, The Bitcoin Standard. And I think there's a potential very real place for it in people's portfolios as maybe a small position. That's not a recommendation to anybody, but just how I'm thinking about it. The thing that was like caught in my mind was just how many absolutists there are out there that talk about Bitcoin as if it's this guaranteed thing and the US dollar is guaranteed to crash, all that stuff. I don't really buy any of that stuff, but I am open to the idea that Bitcoin has a place in people's portfolio if we're aware of the risk and things like that. So I'm trying to keep an open mind about Bitcoin and not let the narrative pushers like push me away, the extremists push me away from it. That's kind of what happened to me before. And I'm trying to improve my thinking, right?
Bitcoin is one of those ones where I don't comment on Twitter because the bulls are incredibly bullish. I made the mistake of talking about online betting on Twitter, and a lot of people get that wrong, and they're very, very passionate about their feelings on it. So I'm not saying any more because I already had those interactions this weekend. Steve, your thoughts here?
To go in reverse, actually, is it weird to say that I'm least interested in virtual and augmented reality? I know there's all sorts of interesting stuff, but it seems like this thing, like they've constantly pushed it. But I know a lot about all four of these industries, but I am interested most about in Bitcoin to see not just Bitcoin, but cryptocurrencies in general. I think are going to be an interesting developing story in 2020, and I see a question down there from our own Simon Erickson. Will you personally be buying any Bitcoin in 2021? Maybe. It's possible, but I haven't been interested in it before. I know Simon owned it a long time ago and did quite well there. But yeah, it's
I would have said 100% no, but I'm actually coming around to it a little bit in terms of, I'm not saying I'm going to buy some. I'm saying I'm more open to the idea. Austin, I'll give you the last word. Do you own Bitcoin? Will you be buying Bitcoin? Will you be paying off some of the bets we make in Bitcoin this year?
I don't own any currently. There's a likely case that I will buy a small amount of GBTC, which is a grayscale Bitcoin trust. And I know Bitcoin fandom is going to come out and say, don't do that. That's dumb. There's a premium on it, blah, blah, blah. But there's a whole lot of like digital security issues that I'll like lose. If I had a digital wallet, I would lose it. I would lock myself out or whatever. If I can own grayscale Bitcoin trust and just small amounts in my brokerage account for basically pay $0 to buy it versus on Coinbase, if you buy Bitcoin, there's like a $1 or $3 fee or something like that. And just slowly with a very small percentage, just buy some on the ups and downs. I think that's how I, as an investor, will function best. I will probably buy some in 2021. That also means we're probably at a top for Bitcoin because I'm interested in it again.
I would not count on a pullback. I'm not entirely convinced this crazy rise is sustainable in the near term, but who knows over the long term? We
are going to get so attacked after this show. We're done.
Yeah, I got to say,
and it does have a place. I think so.
I don't understand what it is. I hope to learn more about it in the coming year. That's it. We're done. The first edition of 7 Investing Now in 2021. We've got roughly 160 more of these to come this year. That sounds really daunting when you say it out loud. So if you want to get in touch with us, that's really easy to do. You can send an email to info@7investing.com. That email usually goes to Steve. And I will point out, I keep making all these like, well, we're not necessarily going to answer quick because it's a holiday. I'm pretty sure we were all talking at roughly 10 o'clock last night where emails were getting sent out and answered. So we are a really responsive group. We also need hobbies. I think it's not necessarily great that
we're responding to 7 Investing email, man.
Apparently it is. I tried to have fun during this break. We watched Wonder Woman. Not fun. The new Wonder Woman is absolutely terrible. I liked the first one. The new one is like if all you knew about the 1980s was the movie Valley Girl mixed with no plot. Like that. It was dreadful.
I will say my now 13-year-old daughter enjoyed it. So that was I was kind of like, oh, you put it next to like anything.
How does her identity be kept secret? She doesn't have a mask or anything. Wouldn't the whole world know? Or did they know? I don't know.
She looks totally different.
And she's been around for 60 years, and here is her method of security. So she foils like a crime at a mall. And this is 1984, so there's no cell phones, there's no cameras. But she literally just says to the people there, shh, don't tell anybody. As if nobody would go home and say, hey, a flying woman in a metal outfit with a magic lasso of sorts rescued us from guys with guns who were basically like the villains in Home Alone. Like they were particularly incompetent. The big villain of the movie, which is played by the guy who's the Mandalorian in a ridiculous wig. What was his
alert?
Yeah, what was his end game exactly? Usually you want to control the world. His was just like, I want to do stuff, and I don't care if everybody, including me, dies. It made very, very little sense. But if you ever wanted to see Kristen Wiig dressed up in leftover costumes from Cats, you'd be able to do that. All right, this has been silly. You can also contact us on Twitter @7investing. That's @7 investing. It's been a ridiculous show. For Austin Lieberman, for Steve Symington, I am Dan Kline. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you on Wednesday.